All right, our esteemed viewers, we are live, and we are happy to be interacting with you for the for another edition of ACFIM Talks. This week, we are going to be interrogating a matter that we think is central to the hearts of many of us Ugandans, but also our colleagues in the other African countries. The topic we are discussing today is corruption and whether there is hope for us as citizens. Now, we are going to have two esteemed guests, and allow me to introduce the first one that is on set already. The first guest is Mr. Robert Lugorobi. Mr. Robert Lugorobi is an anti-corruption expert, but as well as an activist. He has fought corruption in the trenches. He started his anti-corruption work in 1999 when he joined the Inspectorate of Government. He served there in various capacities until 2007 when he left. And at the time of leaving, he was the principal regional inspectorate officer from the Inspectorate of Government. Then he crossed over to join civil society. And the organization he joined does not come any bigger than Transparency International, Uganda chapter. Of course, there he served in different, thereafter he served in different other capacities. He has also served as a donor. He worked with the Democratic Governance Facility as Deputy Program and Learning Manager. But the interesting thing about Robert is that he holds a master's degree in anti-corruption. There are not many activists that double their activism with a degree, with academic knowledge, but also a man who has interacted with corruption, with anti-corruption work from the side of government, and then he came to civil society. And then I joined the donor side. Robert, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Henry.
Yes, and then our main guest has joined us, Honorable Olive Betty Kamia Turiomwe. She's the new IGG, having been appointed in July this year. She's also an academic giant, because as I understand, she has authored over 200 articles, okay, which have been published locally and internationally. She's an alumni of Makerere University. She worked as at a number of public institutions, including Uganda Leather and Tanning Industries, based in Jinja. She has worked at Nyanza Textiles. She was also employed as at Uganda Breweries Limited as marketing manager. So from that perspective, she is no stranger to the private sector. And upon departing the company, then she was appointed as the executive director of Uganda Wildlife Education Center. It's while there that we came to see and test her expertise in terms of organizing and management, because she lifted this institution from an organization that was less known about to an organization that was reigning supreme in terms of performance. And so the organizational culture that she left in place is something we always continue to reflect on and hope that she can duplicate the same feat there. But she also has a very extensive political career. Between 2001 and 2004, while still at Uganda Wildlife Education Center, she became an official political, she joined the political pressure group Reform Agenda. You remember very well. This was the precursor to FDC as a political party. But from 2005 and 2010, She served as a special envoy on the FDC President Kizza Besigye's. She served as a special envoy for Kizza Besigye. She's also founder of the and reigning president of Uganda Federal Alliance, and of course she's also former Minister of Lands, Housing and Urban Development, a position she held up until May 2021, when she came. She was then appointed Minister for Kampala. And then, of course, today we are interacting with her as the new IGG, Honorable Betty Oliver Kamya-Turiomwe. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Henry.
Yes.
And good morning, both of you, Henry and Robert. And I want to thank the viewers as well. And I want to thank you for your kind introduction. You left out one thing, though.
Mm-hmm.
At the end, I left Uganda Federal Alliance and joined NRM to complete CV.
To complete your CV. So she's now a serving member of the NRM, and so she's well grounded in the arena of politics. So let's get the show off the ground, ladies and gentlemen. So the first question will go to you, Honorable Betty Kamya.
Yes.
The Inspectorate of Government that you are leading now has just been recently fully constituted. We watched and followed the proceedings. So as we speak now, we have a fully constituted Inspectorate of Government. But the Inspectorate of Government has been constituted so many times before. Maybe to hit this show, to hit the ground running, may I request you to share with us what exactly you think that the newly constituted Inspectorate of Government is going to do differently from what the previously constituted institutions did not manage to do?
Well, thank you once again, Henry. And first of all, I want to thank God for the gift of life and also for this appointment, which was channeled through His Excellency, the President of Uganda, to whom I'm also very grateful. And I speak for my colleagues as well. I also want to note that there is a lot of work that is being done at the Inspectorate and that has been done in the Inspectorate. Last week, at the beginning of this week, Monday, Tuesday to Wednesday, we had an induction program where the three of us, myself and my deputies, were taken through what the Inspectorate is supposed to do and has done and is doing. And we were amazed at the amount of work. I think the missing link was this amount of work does not really go to the public. The public don't get to know. But a lot of money has been saved, a lot of prosecutions have been achieved and are ongoing, and a lot of prevention to corruption is also going on. So I want to pay tribute to my predecessors and also to the team in place for the work they're doing. However, what we have, what we said when we were swearing in before the president, and what I'd like to say now, is that we are going to also pay a lot of attention to the function of detection and prevention of corruption, because I think more attention is being paid to running after the corrupt people, prosecuting them, and punishing them. That will continue, but also a lot of attention is now going to be paid to detection and prevention, so that at the end of my 4 years, there will be less coming in cases for prosecution, as more and more awareness, sensitization, and mobilization is happening. We would like to rebrand the war against corruption from being the war of the IGG and other frontline anti-corruption institutions, as you call them. We would like to rebrand it to be a war of the people. We want to co-opt all Ugandans in this war so that everybody has a role to play. Every Ugandan should feel that they have a role to play and that when they have played their role, they will be appreciated. And at the end of it all, the country, our country, Uganda, will be the winner. So to directly answer your question, we shall continue with prosecution and running after corrupt people, but we shall also put a lot of emphasis on detection and prevention. And we know where to detect, where detection begins. Because by now, all Ugandans know who the storekeepers of our money are. The storekeepers of our money is the permanent secretary, is the cow, is the accounting officer of public institutions. We shall engage them to ask them where they need support to enhance their stewardship.
Thank you very much, Honorable Kamia. Robert, let me bring you into this discussion at this juncture. The Honorable Betty Kamia is saying the war is going to be taken to the people. The people, because in her view, and you may agree, I think that she feels that the approach of prevention and the detection is much better than chasing the thieves, because what are you going to do? Throw everybody into jail or what? So what is your take from your vantage point and having worked in that institution before, and from what she has shared, which I think is interesting? What is your take?
Thank you very much, Henry, and the listeners out there. ACFIM, thank you for this very important discussion which we are having. And I wish also to take this opportunity to congratulate Honorable Betty Kamia for the appointment, but also the other two colleagues. As Henry said, the Inspectorate of Government, I'm so much attached to it because it's the one which ushered me into this career, which I've held for over now 20 years. So I'm very grateful to be seeing you. And Henry, just to get back to the question, I cannot actually agree more with the IGG. I think that these are very, very important steps. Probably they may not be new, but the emphasis which is talks about, which is now putting to these two, especially talked about detection, improving detection and prevention. And I think we all know, those who are involved in fighting crime, that it's always easier to detect and prevent, and more cost effective to detect and to prevent something happening, rather than spending a lot of money in either prosecution, sanctioning, which sometimes, yes, there could be some convictions, but they may not mitigate the damage. So I think that one is very, very important. And also the second point of the Honorable is very exciting, rebranding the fight. When I was coming here, I wanted to make a few statements, and that was one of them. That no one, including the topmost person, can fight corruption alone. No institution is good enough and well equipped to address the corruption, because one, corruption happens everywhere, and people are participating in it. So it is better if we put this fight to the people so that we all become part of the fight for anti-corruption. And many people will say, but why? What can I do when I don't hold an office? Before even, I think the first step is for you as an individual not to get involved, just to start, because that one is possible. And when you have done that, then you can mobilize others to do what you have done so that you can be an example when you walk the talk. So I'm very happy, just to get back to your question, about these two strategies, because I believe if well executed, they may create the change which we all want to happen, not only in IG, but in all other public institutions.
Thank you, Robert. And of course, you will understand that most of the information that about the people, the thieves, and the kind of the wealth they're accumulating is always known within the people. The people always know this, except they don't normally believe that when they report, whatever they're reporting will be of importance. Now, Honorable Kamia.
Yes, Henry.
But back to this, exciting strategy of rebranding the fight against corruption to make it a war of the people, which is very strategic. It is coming at a time when public trust in the institution is also low. And if I recall correctly, the president, I think, as a word of caution, I think he said, go and clean up the house. We do know that you are inheriting a house that needs some purging and cleaning up to do. Maybe for you to bring us up to speed with what you are doing to purge the house of the rotten apples, in order for you to start to build public trust, in order for the people to embark on the bandwagon of fighting corruption.
Yes, Henry. But before I get to that, I really must conclude my previous statement by drawing the attention of viewers and listeners that actually one way to fight a war is to give it a face so that people recognize the enemy and can isolate them. That's a strategy. We fought a war against AIDS. We are fighting a war against COVID. But winning these wars, we had to identify the enemy. With AIDS, those of you who remember or who have read about it, people started by thinking that it is witchcraft. And they didn't know what to do. They just thought there was witchcraft around until it was identified as a virus that attacks the immune system. And then were also told how to recognize it and how to avoid it. Similarly, with the COVID and other pandemics, because corruption is a pandemic. Once the pandemic is given a face, then people can join in because they know whom they're fighting. So one of the strategies that we are going to do is to give corruption a face so that people can identify corruption. People should be able easily, the population, without being professionals in administration or investigation or prosecution, they should be able to identify corruption by people's lifestyles, whether their lifestyles are commensurate with the jobs they're doing or commensurate with the money they are earning. Once people know how to identify corruption, the next stage is to coach them in what to do about corruption. That is where whistleblowers come in. That is where communities can rise up in local government. That is where communities can reject bad roads, badly constructed schools, badly constructed bridges. If the communities come out that strongly to report, to reject, to personally get involved, then the war against corruption will be on a firm footing. Now, going back to your question of the weavers in this institution, yes, His Excellency did tell us during swearing that he has reports that there is some corruption in the institution and that we need to weed it out. Of course, in the week, that I have been here, I cannot say that I've already identified it. But what we need to do here is to strengthen systems, to strengthen procedure, to strengthen adherence to rules and regulations, to strengthen assessment, to strengthen deliverables, deliverable milestones, deliverable timelines. When we strengthen all that, it will be easy to identify the corrupt people and to weed them out. Some are not even corrupt, they're just incompetent. And when you are incompetent, you may be taken to be corrupt because you're not working, because you're not delivering. So this system of strength and adherence to procedure and systems and regulations will help us to identify, isolate, and weed out the corrupt and the incompetent. Because as I said, not all of them may be corrupt, but they could be just incompetent and they're passed off as corrupt. Because now corruption is almost a way of life in Uganda. People think that you can get away with it and they take it as it is. So yes, the fight against that one in the institution will be to strengthen work plans and also to monitor closely and supervise people's work plans and deliverables.
Robert, you worked in that institution. How
Yes.
were these being weavers able to fly below the radar and get to infest this institution? And how can one, purge them out?
Thank you very much. I think to begin with, Inspectorate of Government, people who work for Inspectorate of Government are part of the society. And expecting that people of the Inspectorate of Government are going completely to behave differently when maybe other colleagues who in the other institutions are not behaving the same way. It is like wishful thinking, because we also need to realize that the society itself, which is the pond, the big pond where we fish from, has to be, there should be some work done in that, and so that we can get the good people. However, you also have to know that like the IG and any other institutions, I think the challenge has always been in recruitment. Whether it's a civil society, whether it is what, it's the corruption, the internal corruption is not only in the Inspectorate of Government, it's almost in all institutions. It is public institutions, it is the civil society, it is in the private sector, but most of the time, the challenge is always on recruitment. Because, and I've been saying this many times, that when we go for interviews, the only thing people look around for is whether you articulate, whether you are competent, but they never do the background check. So we get rotten mangoes already into the system. When we get rotten mangoes into the system, the process of purifying them, even when we are talking about system, which is still okay, and I agree with the honorable, the systems, the internal monitoring, but the entry point is key. To what extent are you understanding the people you are bringing on board? They are good accountants, fine, they are good lawyers, but what is their moral background? To what extent have you proved them to be people whom we are going to choose and work with in such a sensitive office or in such a company where you want to have results? So I know that the internal systems, the word are very important, but I also think that whoever is an employer there and wants to, integrity should count at the entry point. How do you do that? We can go into that, into the details, because some organizations do it. They do integrity tests. They investigate people before they join in. But someone who is corrupt in one office does well in the other. I mean, just cross over. All the time they are crossing over. And when you cross over, you bring your habits into the system. So I know that when you work for Inspectorate of Government, you are supposed to be exemplary. But sometimes that exemplary culture does not just come. There must be a lot of work being done in order to ensure that even when we sieve, we try by sieving out the right people. When they come, we train them well, we supervise them well. But the most important thing is what Honorable said, working with the community. Because people know who is corrupt. Even when you work with IG right now or previously, even the officers in the Inspectorate of Government, they know who is corrupt. They know. It's public knowledge. But the challenge is, what do you do with that? What do we do? Where do you take them? Are they going to be sanctioned? Are you safe? How are you managing your own risk? So if you are with the public will tell you, Robert Ilgori was here at the district and was paid money. And maybe they have evidence. Even the other people who are paying, if they get to know that you have a system, they will report. They will report, and you'll be able to. So working with other stakeholders is a very important thing, not only for IG, but all of us, including all the civil society, because they also need clean people into these offices.
Right. Let me go back to Honorable Betkamia. Robert, you almost alluded to it. Whereas corruption seems to have taken a more sophisticated dimension over the years, the actors that engage in this corruption seem to remain the same. From the layman's viewpoint, we think these are people that are well connected to the corridors of power. And therefore, political corruption, we think and believe at this day and age is one of the greatest challenges we are facing. You and us, the citizens who are eager to join you in this fight. How are you going to handle these, some of these individuals that think they are larger than life, and yet their names keep showing up in scandals?
Robert is right in most of what he said. But a thief, if he finds the store locked with a strong padlock, even the thieving in him will not happen because the store is properly locked, the padlock is strong, and the keys are safely held by someone. So that is what prevention is about. You may not stop the building of morals is one of the way to fight corruption. And we have institutions that should do that, although all of us can support the religious institutions, the patriotism efforts, and even the home grooming. They should try to build. We need moral rearmament for sure. There must be some efforts in moral rearmament. But my job, because I can't do everything, my job will be to try to detect and to prevent. Even the people who have low morals, my job is to prevent them. I probably don't have the tools to preach to them about their morals, but I have the tools to prevent them from stealing. And when they steal, I have the tools to catch them and punish them. So I'm going to use the tools at my disposal. But I do agree that the moral rearmament is another story that we need to talk about as a country. And, like we said, it's even a way of life. Kids want to go to vie for position of the monitor, and the teachers encourage them to bring sweets. And so whoever has more sweets will probably get the vote, even if they do not have the ability to be a leader. And parents give them the money, or the parent even buys the sweets, and whoever has the most expensive sweets will take. That's how far down it goes. So the question of moral rearmament is a very big question, and it must be taken down to the young people, to the primary kids of this country, to be able also to recognize the face of corruption and reject it and fight it. I totally agree. But there are many ways. We can't just follow one route of recruiting. Somebody may have wonderful morals, but he doesn't have the technical and professional know-how to handle an office. Of course, there will be somebody who might have both. It is good to look out for somebody who has both. But when somebody rots along the way, because even a fresh mango, it begins as a raw, beautiful, fresh mango, but along the way, it gets rotten. What do you do with that one? Because the world is not a straight football field, which you can predict how it's going to be and which you can all see on one plane. No, even people change along the way. But my job as the inspector IGG is to detect, to prevent, to investigate, to prosecute, and to get convictions where necessary and possible. And the tools are there. I'm just saying we are going to make sure that the tools are employed to do that work.
Right. Still with you, Honorable Kamia, the ordinary Ugandan has issues with the public officers, and one of the common challenges they're confronted with is, for example, at the level of police across the country, police bond is a cash cow. Their people get to be arrested and they have to keep coughing and selling off their things to pay. In courts of law, to get bail, you have to pay. Bail is also a cash cow. And this is happening outside Kampala in those upcountry courts. What kind of hope can you give to the Mutwawansi who is confronted with these things? But also, maybe as you answer, there's also an issue of district land officers which get to be involved in these, corruption scandals. Around here, Kampala, we know the case of Wakiso, which doesn't seem to have been concluded. But the district land office of Wakiso is a replica of other district land offices. The corruption that is manifested, that is infested in those institutions is despicable. What hope can you give to our viewers who are faced with these challenges on a daily basis?
True. Police bonds have really become a cash cow. And I hope that what we are planning to do is to raise everybody's consciousness about the role they have to do, including those in supervisory roles. So we shall engage, because corruption is in all arms of government, and like you said, in the private sector as well. We hope, or we plan, to engage the executive through the Prime Minister, the Right Honorable Prime Minister. When we meet the Right Honorable Prime Minister, we'll say something like, there's corruption in the government under your watch. And the ministers under the Prime Minister, their level of consciousness and political oversight must be challenged and raised. You are supervisors of your ministries. How does corruption happen under your watch? You speak to the Chief Justice and say there's corruption in the judiciary under your watch. Speak to the Speaker. There is corruption in the Parliament under your watch. Let us now work together to identify the type of corruption that is in your institution. And it begins by accepting. Once you resist or deny, then the problem will not be solved, or the doctor cannot give the right prescription. So as I said from the beginning, mobilization of the community to get involved in this war will begin with the leadership of this country. It is not just the IGG war, but the Prime Minister, the ministers, members of parliament, cows, permanent secretaries, down to the average person. Everybody's consciousness must be raised. I mean, I want to pay tribute sometime to the media. They do raise these issues, but when they raise the issues, they just go to the archives as media stories. There is a big story today in the Daily Monitor of about 9 billion shillings, which was wired to schools, to institutions in the Ministry of Agriculture during the COVID lockdown. And according to the Monitor story, it says that some of the money is said to have been sent to pay for learners' food during lockdown when there have not been any learners. So I am going to take interest in this story and investigate it if there is merit, if I find merit, and it's not just a newspaper story, and investigate it. So if we all rise up and make ourselves alert, because if such a story comes up like that, it should be maybe the top leadership, I don't want to point fingers at anybody, of the institution who should raise the flag and say, I need an investigation in this one. And like you said, recently, of course, I was Minister for Lands. And in the Ministry of Lands, as everybody knows, there's a very, very dirty story, or many dirty stories. I'm sure that the ministers will play their part, because I passed on all my findings in my report to the minister, and I know that the minister is doing his best. But what I found out in the Ministry of Lands was mainly issues of supervision. They are not supervised. They just do their work. There's minimum supervision in the land offices. And so, if you don't supervise, then people relax until they just open the doors and everybody can enter. So, to answer your question, we are going to mobilize people, but also to raise the consciousness of the supervisors to up their game. If you're sleeping on the job, please, minister, you are the political head, supervisor of that ministry. How is the money being stolen under your nose? Are you sleeping on the job? Please wake up. Let us work together. Be the one to ask for an investigation in your ministry, not just say, the technical people are the ones who know that. We're just going to ask everybody to up their game.
Thank you very much, Honorable. Robert, you worked in the Inspectorate of Government, and there's a staff there, but of course also as a man who is well grounded even academically on issues of anti-corruption. This issue of supervision, which seems to be the biggest deficit, because people just sit in offices. Either they are incompetent or they are syndicating with those that are, grabbing and stealing on industrial scale. Bring us up to speed. How do you go about getting people that are supposed to do the supervisory work do their work? Do you just get rid of them? Do you train them? How do you approach a scenario like this one?
Thank you, Henry, and the viewers, and Honorable, for all what has been spoken about this issue. Supervision is key. And I think for every institution, they invest heavily in supervision. And it can be done in many ways, training people, putting controls and targets and all those kind of things. But I think the biggest challenge with anti-corruption fight in this country that we don't take stock and review our approaches and find out what has worked, what has not worked, why it has not worked, so that at the end of the day, we come up with the well-based and evidenced approaches anti-corruption, because we are talking about corruption, which is a very complex issue. When you are talking about supervision, just to take you on what you are saying, who is supervising? Whose interest? Are the supervisors clean? Are they not part of the scam? Who is that minister? Is that minister very interested in the integrity and the well management of that institution? Is he convinced or is she convinced? Is he a convicted person that this country requires and needs people who are going to be working for others? Or the motivation even for joining politics and holding offices is about the money, is about creating wealth for individuals. What about issues around impunity? What about when they see others doing almost similar things and they're not punished? What will happen if others do it and others, when they do it, you sanction them? So I think a lot of debate, like Honorable said, we really need to go to the ground and to the roots and say, what can we do together as a country? How can we address issues which we are grappling with in respect to this anti-corruption? One of them is impunity. Those whom we have allowed to do these things, and they seem not to be able to even to touch them. And impunity is not only actually in very high offices. Impunity impunity is actually in even small offices. So if we are to start and ignite this fight, then we have to get back to the basics. Henry, I don't know whether you got lost on the way.
You got lost on the way.
You got
Yes.
Henry may have got
back,
lost on the way.
Yeah. Sabotu was around the way. Yeah, but you had finished your submission, right?
I don't know where you stopped. I don't know where because at a certain point I was talking without you, so I don't know. Anyway,
he was saying, Henry, Robert was saying, all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. So where do we begin? I mean, we are the Ugandans here. We must repent, all of us, and decide to rebuild our country, to rebuild the morals. And the morals really will start while we fight now corruption, but elimination will begin with the morals of the young people. The young people. But even young people left alone, I mean, we know young people, like now they say, when they're in school, because there's supervision, they don't get pregnant. Because there's supervision. When they go home, they're getting pregnant because there's no supervision. It's the same person. It's not as if the person who is in school has higher morals than the kid who is at home. It's just as more supervision at school than supervision at home. So the art, the responsibility, and the work of supervision must be upped. But people must take also responsibility. And I think that at some point, the Ministry of Public Service might have to reconsider the management of performance appraisal. Just appraising people at the end of the year and putting files in the archives should not be working anymore. Appraisals must be for a reason. We should see people rewarded for good performance. We should also see people penalized for poor performance. So that's what I'm saying. Supervision, which also goes with performance assessment and also the results of the performance assessment. I mean, in the government and many institutions, there is a end of year assessment, a routine exercise, which costs money, but at the end of the day, the files are there. And who does the assessment? I'll give you an example of an institution where I was, which I'll not say, where I had a driver And my driver, at the end of the year, I heard that my driver was the best employee of the year. And nobody asked me. I am the one he drives. I am the one who knows whether he keeps time or doesn't keep time, or whether he keeps the car clean, or whether he does what. I was not even asked, but I heard. And he was a good driver. I would vouch for him. I would say that, yes, he does a good job, but I wasn't asked. So I think we need to reevaluate who assesses, and when the performance is done, first of all, it should be objective and fair, and there should be mechanism to make it objective and fair so that people don't use it as a tool to gain advantage over others or punish others. It must be designed like a management tool intended to raise performance and deliverables for this country. So the question of performance appraisal should be given serious attention.
So on that point of performance appraisal, we are going to go for a very short break. And when we come back, we are going to talk matters Leadership Code Act and the tribunal.
The monster of money politics is eating up Uganda's democracy. When you take money from a candidate, it means you are feeding the monster. Then you become a part of the problem. When a candidate who overspends on campaigns is elected, he or she will not represent voters but himself. He or she will engage in corruption to recover campaign money. Social services will not be delivered and the voter will suffer more. Voter, let's be wise. Give democracy a chance. Do not sell your vote. Focus on the issue.
My point, my issue.
Yeah, thank you very much, our viewers. We are back and we are talking matters concerning whether government is winning the war on corruption. And of course, we are joined by two eminent sons and daughters of the soil. Among them, the Honorable Betty Oliver Kamia, the newly appointed IGG, who has come with the who has come into the office almost guns blazing, and of course then the activist academic on matters of anti-corruption, Mr. Robert Rugolovi. Honorable Betty Kamia, let me come to you. I hope you are on set, you know.
Yes, I am.
Yes. Now, the leadership code. We know that there are efforts to put in place and actualize the leadership code tribunal. Okay. But when you look at the manner in which these declarations are being made, they are not publicly accessible. You want to take the vote to the people so that it is us, the people, that are fighting the corrupt. But we don't get to see the declarations that are being made, yet it is us who know which officer owns what. We know their assets, we know their wealth. We talk about this when we are having a beer, and that's where it stops. So how, in your view, do you think we can give cutting edge to the leadership code? That when these, even when the tribunal, first of all, do you think the tribunal is the missing link? Number two, how do we give it cutting edge as the leadership code? That we get to help with the inspectorate of government with providing and volunteering information on the wealth of these men and women, which they often hide, so that the code can be an intervention of some consequence.
Well, first of all, there is the right to privacy. is a value that we that we subscribe to in this country. The leadership code, among other things, is intended to help government or the inspectorate of government to keep record of your assets and to track them so that you can account for them. So it's like a library. It's like a library. You go to the library when you want to read something. But the library, just because they want people to read, will not put books along the roadside, throw them in the road, because you want everybody to be educated to read. But you should know that should you need information, the library is the place to go. You'll find the information there, and it is a reliable information. So I do not think that it is right to publish people's wealth just because they're public servants, but they should be recorded so that we can track your progress or your acquisition or non-acquisition of assets or of your assets. So the archives, the records are there in case of need. But like you said, when when there is need, then we get out. Even most things, I mean, like the penal code or the Bible of everything, you pull the relevant section of the penal code to use it during a relevant case. You know, you don't just throw the whole penal code there. Or in the Bible, you pull out the relevant verses to be used at the right time. Even the leadership code, people have all these declarations they make. One is psychological, so that you know that now government knows what I have. It is on record. And you also know that false declaration is a crime under the law of Uganda. So that psychological knowledge alone helps you to, or rather manages you to manage yourself. And it also helps because even people who are corrupt and steal things, they fidget. That fidgeting alone to hide a building under somebody's name who may take it, fidgeting to hide money, fidgeting, that alone is a tool that helps government to track or to stop people from being corrupt. But in my view, I think it is right that there should be a record to be used only when it is required, not for public consumption anytime. That is my view, and I think that is the mind behind the leadership code.
Robert, let me seek your views on this one, because today we know that most of our leaders have now mastered the art of managing offshore accounts. They have offshore businesses without public scrutiny. Do you think the leadership code, as it is, will have enough teeth to bite?
Thank you very much, Henry. I think the first challenge I mentioned, I can mention it again, that most of our interventions are not based on reviews, research, good practices. That's why we come up with them. And many times it's a copy and paste. And when we bring them, we never review them to evaluate why maybe they have not served the purpose and what can be fixed. So whether leadership code or whatever, and I know that in this country, there are people who believe that all countries all over the world leaders are not declaring publicly, and because they have not actually They have not bothered even to read and research about those countries. That's where leadership code have had effects or positive effects. But I want to tell you that, these are very complex matters. I was watching or reading an article, I think it was Nigeria, when somebody was saying, the moment you're a public servant, there are some rights you have to forego. That was his view, and I still believe that in one way or the other, you have to go back to the designers of the Leadership Code Act who introduced these declarations and say, what do they want to achieve? If it's going to be on request, why do I have the capacity to cross-check all the information that has been given? I know for us in research, we say don't collect any information you don't have purpose for or you don't have intention of using. It is going to be a waste of money and time if I ever collect data, which I'm not going to be using promptly, especially timely. So the debate of leadership code and what should be, to my view, we should really be thinking about it and also get the good practices. Because I know some countries who have made it public. You can actually go right now on the internet and check on the declaration of powerful leaders, very, very powerful people, not only in their own countries, but in the world, and you can get it just by click of a button of the computer. So, I mean, we are still living in this country, and I agree to a certain extent, this whatever of not sharing information, and it's part of us, a secrecy. But we also know, or we should know, that secrecy has a part to play in terms of our failure to address corruption. So how can we be debating to find, some kind of consensus, some kind of convergence on how do we use this information? Right now, I think the law was amended to include all public servants are declaring. How many are they? They are quite a number. How many people in the Inspectorate of Government have been assigned to be looking at those declarations? What's their capacity? What's their resource base? So the moment people, corruption is a very complex issue. And the people who are involved in corruption are watching. The moment they get to know that you have not designed a system of detecting, like Honorable said, you don't have it, but you are collecting information for the sake of fulfilling maybe a legal requirement, then they will not be bothered. Let me tell you one thing. I don't think, and I don't think that's my personal view, that there are many people, if there are anywhere, who are very, very much scared about the leadership code. I mean, declaring. Because if I don't declare if I don't declare, for example, if you want me to declare today, and I don't declare fully my assets, what is going to happen? What are the chances that I'll be landed on, and I will be picked, and I will be followed? I know someone would going to tell you that, we do routine, every year we verify. But you would ask that person, how many people are involved? How many people were covered last year or 2 years? In terms of those who declared, what are the percentage of the people who declared and their assets were verified? And the process of verifying, how intensive was it that the people who are likely to be knowing this person's assets were actually involved? How is that process being done in order to create the impact you want? Because you never put a measure which you are not going to perfect. That will be a wastage. And in my view, you rather not have it than having something which is just a monumental.
No, Robert.
You want to rebuttal this, Honorable?
As they say, Rome was not built in a day. And I think once you have one step, you built one step, you don't destroy it because I've not yet built the second step. You build on it. All the things that Robert has said are right. And we can certainly improve on the management and usage of the leadership code. But the principle of having everybody declare their wealth is good. It's like saying, Robert, if the law says don't steal, it is there waiting for the thief. You can't say because I haven't caught a thief. One day it will catch the thief. And when you catch the thief, the law is there. But you cannot accuse anybody in Uganda for anything outside the penal code. So if you don't have a declaration of the penal code of assets, if you don't have a declaration, how will you even start to accuse anybody for amassing illicit wealth over a period when you don't have that law in place? So I think for Robert to say, we'd rather not have it at all, I have agreed with you so far, Robert, and I really sympathize with your frustration. It is our frustration. It is a national frustration, but let us give credit to whatever foundation has been laid and built on it. Yes, there are so many people, but now, if everybody played their role, then the leadership code or the declaration of assets will be put to better use. You know that so and so is a junior officer in a ministry, but he has got a set of apartments costing billions. So you go and report that person, and we check whether those apartments were even declared. Most likely he will not even declare. But I can cross-check with the KCCA whether he's the one who applied for building, what do they call it, plans. I can cross-check with Minister of Lands whose land that belongs to. I can cross-check with many other records of government and put things together. So this is an extra mile in fighting corruption, the fact that people are required to declare their wealth. Certainly it's not the end. We should work. We should build on it, but we should admit that it is a good start.
Thank you very much. Our time is fast spent. Honorable Betkami, I'm going to ask you to give us your parting shots, your conclusive remarks, and then I'll go to Robert.
Well, Henry, thank you very much for inviting me to participate in this very interesting discussion.
It's been an honor.
And Robert, I want to thank you very much for your passion and for your activism. I know that activists do so with passion. So I want to thank you and for your contribution. And this is what I want to tell the people of, what I would like to tell the people of Uganda. And it was what the president said. The president said when we were sailing in, is that the war against corruption is actually easy to fight because the people are tired of corruption and they want it out. We want to personalize corruption, the cost of corruption, so that people know that I am the one they are stealing from. My mother died because there was no medicine in the hospital because that man is driving a Benz which is out of corruption. And we make that person accountable. So we shall reach every sitting room, we shall reach every classroom, we shall reach every institution with the message of corruption is bad, and me as an individual can do something about its elimination. If we all chip in our best, or even a piece of what we can do, corruption, we shall have a long war. We're talking to the people from Denmark, and they told us that they've been at it for 300 years. But we don't have to, and yet there's still some pockets of corruption. But we don't have to wait for 300 years because we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We can do what they have done. All we need is willpower and support from everybody else. Thank you very much.
Indeed.
And people of Uganda, it's the clarion call. Join the Gwanga Muje. Baganda called it Gwanga Muje. Gwanga Muje have sounded the clarion call. Join the war against corruption.
Robert, your parting shot.
Thank you very much, Henry, ACFIM, the civil society, and thank you, Honorable. I think we agree on so many things, especially bringing on board almost everyone. But I also want to make this statement that we need to address impunity, because it draws back the people who would have wanted to come and join them. They don't want to see the untouchables walking around while others are being fought. I think that's one of the areas which we need to all of us agree that let us go and be committed and have the will to clean up this country, because it is possible. The corrupt are known.
Henry,
And corruption.
Untouchables for 1 second. As you finish.
Yes, please, yes.
I want to talk because the untouchables is what annoys people so much. And this has been my answer to them. The person who gave me this job is the president of Uganda. He's the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. He is the one who is most frustrated with corruption. He has put in his manifesto to stamp out corruption in this term of 5 years. So based on all that, in my vocabulary, there is no untouchable. And there will be no untouchable. This is a war for Uganda, and we are not going to accept anybody called untouchable unless I get a list from Parliament and from Cabinet. This is the list of untouchables. Don't touch. Then I will put in my files and inform my staff and inform the whole country. Thank you.
So all of you untouchables you have heard. There is no untouchable here. So I think our time is fast spent. I think we should have another opportunity to discuss on this matter, because it's a matter of national concern. Let me take the opportunity to thank you, Honorable Betty Kamya, for honoring our invitation. It's been an honor for us to host you. My brother Robert Rugoro, we've been fighting trenches, corruption in the trenches together. He's an activist, I am one activist. We hate corruption, Honorable Betty Kamya. We don't like it. Us and corruption don't coexist. So thank you, Robert, for joining, and we hope we shall have another opportunity to share our insights with the citizens. The viewers, thank you very much for staying with us until now. And until we meet again next week, let me wish you a very lovely weekend. I thank you, and goodbye for now.
Thank you.
The monster of money politics is eating up Uganda's democracy. When you take money from a candidate, it means you are feeding the monster. Then you become a part of the problem. When a candidate who overspends on campaigns is elected, he or she will not represent voters but himself. He or she will engage in corruption to recover campaign money. Social services will not be delivered and the voter will suffer more. Voter, let's be wise. Give democracy a chance. Do not sell your vote. Focus on the issue.